Dawn, late dry season. On the short grass plains of the Serengeti, the night's cool breath retreats before a rising wall of heat. Wind moves low across the ground, threading through brittle stems and carrying the faint scent of dust, dung, and old ash from distant lightning fires. For a moment, the savanna holds a fragile silence, a pause between the nocturnal hunters returning to shadow and the diurnal grazers stepping cautiously into the open. A herd of wildebeest stands motionless, their dark silhouettes cut from the pale horizon, ears pivoting towards something not yet visible. Oxpeckers stir along their backs, lifting in brief, nervous flights. Far off, a line of acacia trees fractures the light, their long shadows forming corridors of concealment. Within one of those corridors, a coalition of lions advances with measured precision, paws landing without sound on powder-dry soil. They are not rushing. Energy cannot be wasted here. Every movement is calculated against hunger, distance, and the physics of pursuit. Somewhere beyond the herd, unseen in the tall grass, another predator waits. Solitary, patient, built for acceleration rather than endurance. The morning will not belong to one hunter alone. In the African savanna, survival is rarely decided by strength and isolation, but by timing, opportunity, and the unforgiving arithmetic of need. The balance of the day begins to tilt, long before the first animal runs. The African savanna is not a uniform wilderness, but a shifting mosaic of grassland, woodland, and seasonal water, structured by cycles of rain and drought that dictate the movement of every living thing within it. Across East Africa, including ecosystems like the Serengeti and the Masai Mara, life persists through constant negotiation with scarcity. Here, sunlight is both creator and executioner. It grows the grasses that sustain vast herds, then withholds rain long enough to wither them into brittle fuel for fire. In this environment, predators are not rulers but participants in a system governed by energy, how it is gained, conserved, and inevitably lost. Among the most influential of these predators is the African lion, a social carnivore whose evolutionary path favored cooperation over solitude. Unlike most cats, lions form prides. Structured groups typically compose of related females, their offspring, and a coalition of males that defend breeding rights and territory. This social system allows them to hunt prey far larger than any individual could subdue alone. Studies conducted over decades of observation have shown that coordinated ambushes increase success rates against large ungulates, such as wildebeest and buffalo, though even then most hunts fail. Failure is an expected cost of survival. Each sprint risks injury, and injury here often means death by starvation. Sharing the same plains is a different kind of hunter. The cheetah, built not for confrontation but for speed. Where lions rely on strength and numbers, cheetahs depend on explosive acceleration and precise timing. Their lightweight frames, elongated spines, and enlarged nasal passages are evolutionary adaptations for a single purpose, a chase that lasts less than a minute but pushes the body to its thermal limits. Unlike lions, cheetahs cannot afford prolonged struggles. They target smaller, more vulnerable prey, often young or isolated individuals, minimizing the risk of retaliation. Yet their kills are frequently stolen by stronger predators. In ecological terms, they occupy a precarious niche, successful hunters that rarely feed in peace. Between these species exists not open rivalry, but a form of competitive coexistence shaped by millions of years of evolution. Lions will kill cheetahs if given a chance, not for food, but to reduce future competition. Cheetahs, in turn, adjust their behavior to avoid areas heavily used by lions, hunting during times when the larger predators are less active. This silent negotiation extends across the entire predator guild of the savanna: hyenas, leopards, wild dogs. Each species carving out a strategy that reduces direct conflict while exploiting different opportunities within the same landscape. At the base of this system stand the herbivores, whose migrations and breeding cycles determine when predators eat and when they go hungry. The wildebeest, in particular, function as a keystone species. Their annual movement across the plains follows the rains, transforming entire regions from abundance to emptiness within weeks. Research tracking these migrations has revealed that predator populations rise and fall in response, their reproductive success tied directly to the availability of these traveling herds. When the herds move on, the savanna quiets, and the predators that remain must turn to riskier prey or endure long intervals without food. In evolutionary terms, the savanna is a crucible of adaptation. Every anatomical feature, the lion's retractable claws, the cheetah's semi-non-retractable grip, the wildebeest's endurance, the oxpecker symbiosis, represents a solution to the same problem: how to persist in a place where resources are temporary and danger is constant. No species here exists in isolation. Each is shaped by the pressures imposed by the others, locked in a dynamic equilibrium that resists stability. The result is a landscape defined not by peace or conflict, but by tension held in balance. Survival does not favor the strongest alone, nor the fastest, nor the most numerous. It favors those aligned, however briefly, with the shifting conditions of the land itself, the timing of rain, the direction of wind, the moment when vigilance falters. Predation in African savanna is governed by constraints that are physiological as much as ecological. Heat, water scarcity, and the sheer distances between reliable food sources impose limits on how often a predator can attempt to kill. Long-term field studies have shown that large carnivores spend the majority of their lives resting, conserving energy in anticipation of brief, decisive exertion. For lions, this often means hunting during the cooler hours of night or early morning, when darkness and lower temperatures reduce the risk of overheating. Their eyes, adapted for low light, allow them to detect subtle movement where prey animals see only shadow. Yet even with these advantages, success rates remain low, commonly below 30%. Each failed attempt compounds hunger, forcing a calculation between patience and desperation. Cheetahs face an even narrower margin. Their bodies are engineered for speed at the expense of endurance and strength. During a chase, a cheetah's body temperature can rise rapidly, approaching levels that threaten organ function. If the pursuit extends too long, the hunt must be abandoned regardless of distance gained. After a kill, the cheetah must rest before feeding, panting heavily to dissipate heat, leaving the carcass vulnerable to scavengers. This physiological bottleneck explains why cheetahs prefer open terrain, where they can see threats approaching, and why they often hunt in daylight despite the presence of larger nocturnal predators. Their strategy is not dominance but avoidance, success achieved by operating in the margins of the ecosystem rather than its center. Scavengers play a critical role in this system, transforming death into continuity. Spotted hyenas, frequently misunderstood as mere opportunists, are in fact highly capable hunters with complex social structures rivaling those of primates. Their clans are matriarchal, led by dominant females whose offspring inherit rank. Hyenas can consume bone as well as flesh, extracting nutrients inaccessible to other predators and leaving little waste behind. This efficiency reduces the risk of disease from decaying carcasses and returns minerals to the soil through excretion. Vultures, circling high on thermals, provide an aerial detection network. Their presence signals a kill long before ground-based scavengers arrive, compressing the time between death and ecological recycling into a matter of hours. The herbivores, though often perceived as passive participants, exert powerful influence over predator behavior. Species such as zebra and wildebeest employ collective vigilance, many eyes scanning for danger while individuals graze. Alarm snorts, sudden bunching, or synchronized flight can disrupt a predator's approach before it reaches striking distance. Some species position themselves strategically within mixed herds, benefiting from the sensory strength of others. Zebra's keen eyesight complementing wildebeest's acute hearing and sense of smell. Calving seasons create temporary surges of vulnerable prey, prompting predators to synchronize breeding cycles so that lactating females have access to easier kills. This alignment of reproductive timing across species demonstrates how deeply interconnected the savanna's inhabitants are, each responding to cues embedded in climate and vegetation patterns. Underlying all of this is the influence of fire and rainfall, forces that reshape the landscape on scales larger than any individual animal can perceive. Lightning-ignited fires clear old grass, stimulating new growth that attracts herbivores and, in turn, predators. Seasonal rains fill ephemeral waterholes, dispersing animals across wider areas before the dry season compresses them back toward permanent rivers. Satellite tracking of collared animals has revealed migration routes that shift subtly from year to year, reflecting changes in rainfall distribution. These movements create transient hotspots of predation, where hunters and prey converge in densities high enough to sustain repeated encounters. In this environment, no victory is permanent. A successful hunt today does not guarantee survival tomorrow, and dominance can erode quickly with injury, age, or environmental change. The African savanna operates as a living system of feedback loops, where abundance triggers growth, growth intensifies competition, and competition restores balance through loss. Predators, prey, and scavengers are bound together in this cycle, each dependent on the other's existence even as they threaten it. Survival in the African savanna begins with energy, how it is acquired, stored, and spent. For a lioness, every hunt is an investment against starvation, not only for herself but for dependent cubs whose growth cannot pause during lean periods. Biologists studying pride dynamics have documented how females coordinate their movements to isolate the most vulnerable individual within a herd, often targeting the young, the injured, or the distracted. This selectivity is not cruelty, but efficiency. Bringing down a healthy adult wildebeest carries a high risk of injury from hooves capable of shattering bone. A single miscalculation can cripple a hunter permanently. As a result, survival favors restraint as much as aggression. When prey densities drop late in the dry season, lionesses may travel vast distances between attempts, conserving strength in the shade for up to 20 hours a day. Hunger sharpens focus, but also erodes muscle, forcing a balance between waiting and acting before weakness becomes irreversible. For the cheetah, survival biology takes a different form, one shaped by fragility. Unlike lions, cheetahs lack the physical power to defend a kill against competitors. Their success depends on minimizing confrontation altogether. Field observations have shown that cheetahs frequently scan the horizon during feeding, pausing every few seconds to assess approaching threats. Even a distant silhouette of hyenas can trigger abandonment of a carcass. This behavior reflects an evolutionary trade-off. A body optimized for speed cannot also support the mass required for combat. Cheetah cub mortality is among the highest of any large carnivore, with many falling victim to lions or hyenas before reaching independence. To offset this, mothers keep litters hidden in dense cover during their earliest weeks, relocating them frequently to avoid detection by predators drawn to scent or sound. Defense strategies among herbivores reveal an equally sophisticated calculus. Wildebeest calves can stand within minutes of birth, an adaptation essential for keeping pace with migrating herds. Zebras form protective circles around their young when threatened, presenting a barrier of kicking hind legs toward attackers. Some antelope species rely on explosive vertical leaps, known as stotting, which may signal fitness to predators, an indication that pursuit would likely fail. These behaviors illustrate that survival is not merely reactive but communicative, a language of movement and posture understood across species boundaries. Underlying these interactions is the principle of risk distribution. No individual animal can eliminate danger, but through group behavior it can reduce personal exposure. Herding dilutes the probability of any one member being targeted, while synchronized flight can overwhelm a predator's ability to focus on a single victim. Predators counter this with tactics designed to fragment the group, sudden charges, flanking maneuvers, or ambushes from concealed positions. The contest is therefore not between hunter and prey alone, but between strategies evolved over millennia, each refining the other in an ongoing cycle of adaptation. Intelligence in savanna is rarely expressed through problem-solving in the human sense, but through instinct refined into flexible behavior. Lions demonstrate this in their ability to adjust hunting strategies according to terrain, prey species, and group composition. In open grassland, they rely on stealth and coordinated encirclement, using subtle tail movements and body orientation to signal position without sound. In woodland or near riverbanks, they may drive prey toward natural barriers, reducing escape routes. Long-term studies of pride in ecosystems such as the Serengeti have recorded distinct preferences for particular techniques, suggesting learned behavior transmitted across generations. Cubs observe hunts from concealment long before participating, absorbing the rhythms of approach and timing that cannot be encoded purely in instinct. Cheetahs exhibit a different form of cognitive adaptation, rapid decision-making under extreme time pressure. Once a chase begins, there is no opportunity for adjustment beyond split-second changes in direction. Observers using high-speed tracking have documented how cheetahs anticipate the evasive maneuvers of prey, cutting angles rather than following directly. This predictive capacity reduces the duration of the chase, conserving energy and lowering the risk of overheating. Yet the same specialization limits versatility. If terrain interrupts a clear sprint path or if prey reaches dense cover, the hunt ends immediately. Success depends on choosing the right moment before the first stride is taken, an act of judgment shaped by experience. Parenting in the savanna is an extended gamble against mortality. Lionesses synchronize births within a pride, allowing communal nursing and cooperative defense of cubs against intruders. This system increases the chances that at least some offspring will survive periods of scarcity. When new males take over a pride, they often kill existing cubs, a behavior documented across multiple studies, bringing females back into reproductive condition and ensuring the propagation of the new coalition's genes. The act appears brutal, yet reflects the underlying evolutionary pressure to maximize reproductive success within limited time frames. Cheetah mothers face their challenges alone. Without the protection of a group, they must teach cubs to hunt while simultaneously shielding them from predators. Training begins with injured prey released in front of the cubs, allowing them to practice pursuit and capture in controlled conditions. Many attempts end in failure, but each failure builds coordination and stamina. By the time the young reach independence, only a fraction of the original litter remains, survivors shaped by relentless selection. Across all these angles runs a consistent theme. Nature operates without intention or malice. Behaviors that appear strategic or even calculated emerge from the accumulation of successful outcomes over generations. Intelligence here is inseparable from survival, expressed not through innovation, but through alignment with the realities of the environment. The savanna does not reward excess. It favors those precisely adapted to its demands, and it removes those who are not. By late afternoon, the heat has hardened into a visible shimmer above the plains. The herds have drifted toward a narrowing ribbon of green where a seasonal river still holds shallow pools, its banks churned into dark mud by thousands of hooves. Thirst compresses distance, drawing predator and prey into the same exposed corridor. A pride of lions lies concealed within a stand of reed-like grass flattened by earlier crossings, their tawny coats blending with the bleached stems. Hours pass in near total stillness. Flies gather at the corners of half-closed eyes. Only the slow rise and fall of breathing reveals that the shapes in the grass are alive. As the sun lowers, wildebeest begin to descend the bank in cautious clusters, pause and scan the opposite side before committing to the crossing. Calves press close to their mothers. The soundscape changes. Water disturbed by hooves, low grunts of contact calls. The hollow knock of horn against horn. This is the moment the lions have anticipated. When vigilance fragments under the competing pressures of thirst and crowding, a lioness inches forward, her belly brushing the soil, closing the final meters that separate concealment from open ground. She is not alone. Two others mirror her movement along the flanks, establishing a loose arc around the densest part of the herd. Then the silence breaks. A burst of acceleration tears through the grass as the lions surge forward, driving directly into the mass of animals. Panic ripples outward faster than sound. Wildebeest scatter in diverging streams, their formation dissolving into chaos. Dust rises in blinding clouds, obscuring distance and direction. Within seconds, the hunt becomes a series of individual pursuits, each predator locking onto the nearest fleeing body. One lioness angles toward a young bull that has slipped on the muddy incline, its footing compromised. She strikes from the side, claws anchoring into hide as momentum carries both animals forward in a sliding collision. But the struggle does not unfold in isolation. The commotion has drawn other hunters from beyond the river bend. A coalition of spotted hyenas approaches at a loping run, drawn by sound and scent, their endurance allowing them to arrive where speed alone cannot. They circle the periphery of the chaos, assessing weakness, waiting for exhaustion to tilt the balance. The lioness maintains her grip, jaws seeking the throat, yet every second increases the risk that the kill will be contested. Around her, the savanna converges on a single point of vulnerability, not out of cooperation, but because opportunity here is fleeting and shared by all who can seize it. The young wildebeest collapses under the combined weight of the lioness and momentum of its own failed escape, lungs heaving, legs churning reflexively against the mud. The lioness shifts her grip with practiced precision, clamping her jaws around the throat and holding as the animal struggles weaken into tremors. Suffocation, not blood loss, is the method, a technique that minimizes risk from flailing hooves. Around them, the dust begins to settle, revealing shapes emerging from a haze. The rest of pride converging beyond them, the advancing line of hyenas close in the distance with unwavering intent. What follows is not a single confrontation, but a test of resolve measured in seconds. The pride forms a defensive ring around a fallen prey, bodies low, ears flattened, issuing deep, resonant growls that carry across the riverbed. Hyenas answer with high-pitched whoops, their calls summoning reinforcements from unseen distances. Each species reads the other's posture, calculating the threshold at which intimidation gives way to attack. Hyenas possess bone-crushing jaws and numerical advantage. Lions hold superior strength and the authority of first claim. In ecosystems such as the Serengeti, these encounters are routine, an established protocol of conflict where injury is the true adversary for both sides. A bold hyena darts forward, testing perimeter, only to be met by a lunging swipe that forces it back. Another circles behind, seeking an opening. The standoff tightens until a second lioness charges outward, breaking the formation in a calculated gamble to scatter the nearest challengers. The maneuver succeeds briefly, creating a pocket of space in which the pride can drag the carcass toward thicker cover. Muscles strain as they haul the weight across uneven ground, driven by urgency rather than hunger alone. Feeding cannot begin until the kill is secured from theft. Gradually, the hyenas relent, settling at a cautious distance to wait for scraps or opportunity. The lions begin to feed in ordered succession, the dominant individuals first, their muzzles darkening with blood as the day's tension resolves into sustenance. Vultures descend in widening spirals, their shadows crossing the ground like silent markers of inevitability. What remains of the wildebeest will pass through many bodies before returning to the soil, flesh to predator, bone to scavenger, nutrients to grass that will one day sustain another herd. As dusk spreads across the savanna, the violence of the encounter recedes into stillness once more. The riverbank bears only the imprint of struggle, churned mud, scattered hair, the fading scent of life transformed into energy. In the African savanna, climaxes are not endings but exchanges, each death sustaining a network of lives that will, in time, face the same uncompromising trial. Night settles with a swift, almost tactile descent, cooling the scorched earth and muting the metallic scent of blood that lingers along the riverbank. The pride feeds in near silence now, urgency replaced by method. Distended bellies signal the first easing of hunger, yet feeding continues while the carcass remains defensible. Studies of lion behavior have shown that individuals may consume up to a quarter of their body weight in a single sitting after prolonged scarcity, a necessary surplus that allows them to endure the uncertain interval before the next successful hunt. Cubs, summoned from hiding by low-contact calls, approach cautiously, their muzzles soon stained as they learn mechanics of tearing flesh, an education measured in survival rather than nurture. Beyond the immediate circle of the pride, the savanna reorganizes around the aftermath. Hyenas edge closer once darkness grants them confidence, testing the lion's vigilance for signs of fatigue. Jackals weave in and out of shadow, snatching fragments overlooked in the larger struggle. Overhead, vultures that fed earlier stand with wings partially extended, allowing the night air to cleanse and cool feathers fouled by blood. Each participant occupies a specific tier in the hierarchy of consumption, a sequence refined by repeated encounters over generations. Nothing is wasted for long. Even the trampled grass will recover, enriched by nutrients pressed into soil. For the surviving wildebeest herd, the event registers as a sudden subtraction rather than a lasting trauma. Within hours of the attack, they regroup at a cautious distance, resuming the slow progression dictated by water and forage. Behavioral ecologists note that prey species cannot afford prolonged disruption. Hesitation risks dehydration and malnutrition that would claim more lives than predation itself. Calves remain closer to their mothers through the night, their vigilance heightened, but by morning the rhythm of grazing will return. Memory in such animals is functional, tuned to immediate threats rather than past losses. Among the lions, the consequences extend beyond satiation. A successful hunt reinforces social bonds within the pride, particularly among the lionesses whose coordination made it possible. Grooming behaviors increase after feeding, a subtle reaffirmation of alliances essential for future cooperation. Yet the carcass also becomes a focal point for tension. Competition for access can escalate into brief but violent disputes, especially when dominant individuals seek to monopolize the richest portions. These conflicts rarely cause serious injury, but they reveal the fragile balance between unity and rivalry within a social predator's life. As the night deepens, the sounds of feeding give way to the steady rasp of insects and the distant calls of nocturnal hunters beginning their own searches. The energy extracted from the fallen wildebeest disperses through the pride, into milk for cubs, into muscle repair for exhausted adults, into fat reserves that will sustain them through lean days ahead. In ecological terms, the kill is no longer an event but a transfer, a reallocation of resources that will ripple outward through bursts, movements, and future confrontations not yet visible. By the second day, little remains of the carcass beyond a darkened patch of earth and a scatter of splintered bone. Spotted hyenas, returning under cover at night, have crushed and consumed what the lions abandoned, their powerful jaws reducing even the densest femurs to fragments. This final stage of consumption completes a process that sustains not only predators but the landscape itself. Calcium and phosphorus, once locked within living tissue, are returned to the soil through waste and decay, nourishing the grasses that will draw future herds back to the same riverbank. In long-term ecological studies across regions like the Serengeti, such nutrient cycling has been shown to influence vegetation patterns, subtly shaping migration routes over time. For the pride, the aftermath unfolds as a period of relative inactivity. Having fed to capacity, they retreat to shade during the day, their movement slowed by the physiological demands of digestion. Bloodstain first stiffens and flakes away as they groom, restoring the insulation and camouflage essential for future hunts. Cubs engage in mock stalks and ambushes around resting adults, rehearsing behaviors that will one day determine their independence. Play, in this context, is not leisure but preparation, the refinement of coordination and bite control in a low-risk setting. Observers have noted that cubs raised in larger prides often develop more effective hunting skills, benefiting from the frequency of real hunts they witness. The wider predator community adjusts as well. Hyena clans, having secured the last remains, disperse toward their territories, their success reducing the need for immediate hunting. Vultures move on in search of new carrion, their absence restoring an unbroken sky above the plains. Even smaller scavengers, beetles, ants, microorganisms, complete their unseen work, breaking down organic residue into forms accessible to plant life. The site of the kill gradually loses its significance, becoming indistinguishable from the countless other places where life has ended and begun again. Among the wildebeest, the loss of a single individual barely alters the herd's trajectory, yet the cumulative effect of such predation shapes population health. Predators tend to remove the weakest or least vigilant animals, a process that can strengthen the genetic resilience of the group over generations. The selective pressure, documented in multiple field studies, helps prevent overgrazing by keeping herbivore numbers in balance with available vegetation. In years when predator populations decline, herds may expand beyond the land's capacity to sustain them, leading to starvation and habitat degradation that affect many species simultaneously. As the dry season advances, the river will shrink further, concentrating animals into ever tighter spaces until the first distant storms signal relief. Some members of the pride may not survive to see that change. Age, injury, or conflict can end a life as surely as hunger. Yet the structure of the ecosystem endures because no single story defines it. Each hunt, each death, each survival feeds into a continuum measured not in days, but in cycles of climate and migration. Night settles over Savanna, cooling the dust, softening the silhouettes of acacia and termite mound alike. In this quiet, one can trace the invisible threads connecting all life, predator and prey, hunter and scavenger, plant and grazer. The story of the hunt of survival and loss is not tragedy nor triumph. It is process. Energy shifts, behaviors unfold, and the land persists. Strength, speed, or cunning are never rewarded as absolutes. They are effective only in alignment with circumstance, moment by fleeting moment. Life here is without morality. Lions do not kill for cruelty. Cheetahs do not flee from conscience. Wildebeest do not grieve. Each action is measured in consequence, each decision honed by necessity. Yet within this impartial calculus emerges an austere elegance. The interplay of form and function, the precision of instinct, the economy of effort. Every chase, every ambush, every survival is a testament to adaptation shaped over millennia, a choreography written by climate, topography, and evolutionary pressure. In observing this world, one recognizes the savanna as a mirror, indifferent, relentless, yet profoundly ordered. Survival is neither celebrated nor lamented. It simply occurs through endurance, through loss, through the unceasing cycle of energy and matter. Life continues, intricate, interconnected, and unyielding. The predator rests, the prey grazes, the ecosystem breathes, and in this balance, the African plains persist as they have for countless generations. This is the story of the savanna, raw, precise, and eternal.